Our next speaker is an international business development consultant and a serial social entrepreneur with interdisciplinary competencies that cut across many industries. He would be speaking on good governance and accountability, setting the agenda for the incoming administration on Diaspora Partnership and Engagement. Please join me to welcome Mr. Abiodun Odunuga.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to first start by saying thank you to the leadership of the Adeboye Foundation for counting me worthy to be on this exalted podium. I felt like I didn't have more to say after a very strong and prolific speech by His Excellency. I felt that was like a cash cross on accountability and governance. All protocols really observed, so I don't take too much time. I want to pay respect to all the pastors, to all the leadership, and thank you for your audience. I've been asked to talk about, the incoming administration's view when it comes to diaspora. And just before I go into the discourse, I also want to just briefly touch on my own personal experience with Pastor D. I'm based in France. I've been in France for almost 10 years now. It's going to be 10 years exactly by September 18 this year. I'm privileged to also be the National Youth Pastor for France, RCG. I'm also a pastor of a redeemed branch in France, and I'm also the one in charge of development affairs for the continent. We have an annual camp we do every year, European Youth Camp, on the platform of the Young Adults and Youth Affairs. And every year, most often than not, we try to bring back Pastor D. This particular year, we beat more than we can chew. After a beautiful camp with maybe over 300 or 400 young people across Europe, we had debt waiting for us. And this camp would cost, tens, sometimes hundreds of thousands of euros. So on this particular camp meeting, I think it was I'm not sure what country, maybe in Belgium, one of the countries we had it. So all the executives in Europe had to gather, and we had to call Pastor D and tell him, see, alas, the axe was borrowed, it has fallen. So we need help. And, without missing words, it was supposed to be a guest speaker. He is a guest speaker, but when you now ask your guest speaker, you're not giving an honorarium, you're asking your guest speaker to clear the debt of a camp meeting in Europe. And lo and behold, without missing words, I had to post this on my link, on my personal page when this happened, and Pastor D cleared our debts. We would never forget that. He did this unannounced. Till today, it's one memory we would always never forget, because he's not somebody who just talks the talk, he walks the talk. And that's him putting his money where his mouth is. So when we talk about Pastor D's legacy in terms of youth development, accountability, I'm telling you, we experienced this firsthand. So you might have experienced it in Nigeria, but I'm saying, and that's one experience, right? I don't even know how much impact it's had across young people's lives as far as Asia. And I'm privileged to know that this platform is definitely a solid one to be able to mainstream his legacy. And I want to say thank you once again for all that you do and for upholding his legacy. Just my first slide, please. If you could put up my first slide. So while the technical team is coming up, when I got into France, I had a passion for Nigeria, and I still do. As a matter of fact, before I left Nigeria, I didn't jack bar like many people. That's why I'm here. So I had always done things in Nigeria when it comes to entrepreneurship and innovation. I had engagement with Microsoft over 10 years ago. I had engaged with the likes of the Commonwealth. And then beyond all of those engagements, also did projects even as far as Brazil, representing Nigeria young people as far as 2012. And then I went for my NYC, shortly after my first degree, 1 year after actually. And then after my NYC, one of the reasons why I didn't redeploy, immediately after my degree, didn't redeploy was because I wanted to still feel the pulse of the country. So I went as far as Adamawa State, Yola. And even though I never, even though I had the chance to have redeployed, I wanted to feel the pulse of the northern people, just to understand, so I can have an holistic idea of what Nigeria and what the nation was about. Shortly after that, continuing my project, when I got to France, one of the reasons why France was a destination for me was because I wanted a country where I wouldn't have to do more than 6 hours flight back and forth, and also be able to be, mainstream, Nigerian conversation and be able to be the bridge, with all due respect, to be the bridge. And back there, as I did some of the things which I will share about with us, I also got married recently, almost 2 years now, and one of the questions I asked my fiancée then, married to a beautiful wife, she's probably watching right now from Europe, and one of the things I asked her was, it was an interview. You're born again, spirit-filled. Do you love Nigeria? Or you're also part of the, we're here forever? And that answer about being passionate about Nigeria was going to define whether I continued or not. And this has been the dream I've cried for years. But all of the things I did long before I left Nigeria, to the time where I was now based out of Nigeria, I want to say with all sorts of modesty that I've been more useful to Nigeria as somebody in diaspora. And that takes me to the first slide that I want to talk about, that Nigerian talent or Nigerian diaspora doesn't have to be a lost treasure. They're actually trapped assets out of the country. I've come to Nigeria regularly, sometimes 3-4 times a year, done projects with the Lagos state government, everything that revolves around facilitating investment for the country. And so, for me, one of the conversations that we should begin to have is not really the story of a lost case story that Nigerians are living. It's about how we can harness this skills. So here I wrote that diasporas are not treasures lost, they are great assets willing to be explored. Next slide, please. Just globally, if you look at the diaspora globally, if diaspora was a country, the diaspora would be the 5th largest in the world. So that means if you take China, India, Indonesia, the US, the diaspora as a whole would be the 5th largest. To say it's not news anymore that people have to live for different reasons. Even Jesus Christ had to live at the time. 2017 to 2012, according to the UN statistics, Nigerian migrants abroad, or according to the UN statistics, this particular one says we're about 1.2 million official figures. So this 1.2 million doesn't take into account other things. If you go to Western Union will be telling you about 5 million Nigerians abroad. If you go to NIDCOM will tell you between 5 to 10. So depending on the stats, roughly you actually have to synthesize all of the statistics, and in reality, not theory right now, there are about 15 to 20 million Nigerians abroad. And that tells you, if that was a country, we're talking about times 5 of some European countries. Luxembourg, for instance, has about 600,000 people, 600,000. So you can imagine that's just a local government in Lagos State, and that's a country. Montenegro, Malta, all of this combined together cannot even amount to the numbers of Nigerians that we have abroad. Next slide. So diaspora figures in remittance. In 2018, I'm just trying to lay a foundation before I begin to give my own suggestions. Remittance in Nigeria, in Sub-Saharan Africa in 2018 was about Nigerians' remittance within Africa was 1/3 of what came into the entire continent, Sub-Saharan Africa. So, and that estimated to about 23.6 billion. That was just in 2018. And as a matter of fact, this particular remittance, some of you already know the statistics, when you convert it into FDI, it's 11 times of what we call foreign direct investment. So that means all the funds that came from corporate organizations, institutions, our remittance in diaspora is 11 times of this. And also, the same year in 2018, that remittance also translates to be 83% of the federal government's budget. And if you go further, between 2017 and 2018, we had an increase in remittance. As a matter of fact, the official development assistance that came into the country, WHO, all of the help that we got from institutions, when you look at the remittance from diaspora, when you multiply those international grants and donations from these organizations, 7 times 4 times that is what was Nigerians' remittance in 2017, 2018. So let you know that the diaspora is an untapped asset. I'm going somewhere, please just bear with me. Next slide. If you do a general overview and you look at these 4 countries, China starting. China has become a manufacturing hub. His Excellency did a very terrific job talking about different sites, which I will not go into. China today is now has become the manufacturing hub for the world. India has become the educational hub for the world. Israel, startup nation for the world. Northern Ireland actually they were almost breaking apart. I was talking about ethnicity and all of that. Their peace was restored, and their case was an exemplary one. Now, from the manufacturing hub that China has become to Indians' own prowess in education to Israel's startup, there is a common denominator among these 4 countries. The common denominator they all have in common that's changed their fortune is their diaspora. It was their diaspora's prowess and contribution in making these countries. Chinese was China averagely as it was before. The Chinese, even Jack Ma, some of you know Jack Ma's story. Jack Ma was based in the US. Got his idea, went back to the US, set up. He was a diasporan guy. And I can go on and on. All of this fortune changed because the diaspora was involved in this development. And so when we talk about migration and diaspora, migration has become the loose word. So we fear it, or let me say government stakeholders fear migration. Our people are leaving, and it's sad. Why are they not staying back? So it has become that the context is things are leaving. It has to do with dispersal. We are losing value. But if well captured, migration can be turned into diaspora, and rather than losing, as a matter of fact, you're actually you are getting something in return. So while migration speaks of dispersal, everybody who goes from their country of origin, they still carry their country at heart. And I'll go to more practical examples of my own experience living in Europe. So once you mainstream diaspora into the conversation, it doesn't matter whether they're in Sudan, Kenya, it doesn't matter whether they're in Yugoslavia, the diaspora prowess is enough to turn all of those outbound folks into real convertible assets for the country. Next slide, please. And so I'll just try to cap my thoughts for the incoming administration. I know there've been a lot about, most of the presidential candidates, as a matter of fact, went abroad, talking to diaspora members, supporters, but it has to go beyond the election period. It has to go beyond trying to galvanize resources. There has to be more. We don't want to see them just when they're coming to advocate for the next or console and tell us to vote for the next. So what are the thoughts I have when it comes to the incoming administration and how they can mainstream diaspora and engagement and also have robust partnerships? The first one is on mapping. My first advice is that government stakeholders or the incoming administration begin to invest in diaspora mapping. You can't even engage what you don't understand. The first question is, where are the Nigerians abroad? It's easy to say, they're in the US, they're in Canada, but beyond and deeper than the country where they're in, after you understand where they are, the question is, who are they really? So if you have Nigerians, for instance, in France, where I'm based, you can name them maybe about 80,000 Nigerians, but that's not sufficient. So the mapping goes deeper to say, what exactly do they do? What do they do? And when you say they're in France, are they in Paris? For instance, in our network, Friends of Nigeria, which is an organization I co-founded about 6-7 years ago, I can tell you for free that there are this number of engineers, Nigerian origin, based in Budapest, and this is exactly what they are doing. I can tell you this is the number of Nigerians who are focused on artificial intelligence and they are into this. I can tell you the number of doctors, and that data, and at the level of what we do within Europe, we've been able to get a robust data, be able to engage them, and this didn't come for free. It took a lot because just like some of us live, there are people who leave Nigeria and they take their passports, never returning. So for you to even get those people to be able to trust the organization and be able to work with us, it took some level of value offering. And the government needs to understand that the more we know them, the more we understand what they want and what they do, the easier it is to engage them. So it's not enough to say there are 20 million Nigerians. Out of the 20 million, how many of them are asylum seekers? Because if you are trying to do diaspora bond or diaspora fund, and you're targeting people who are still illegal in the country, you're talking to the wrong audience. So you can't just say, there are plenty abroad. What exactly do they do, and how do we mainstream conversations? And this goes to financial capital. I already mentioned before that one of the things, the drawbacks that we have when it comes to shortage of investment is we still concentrate in the wrong aspect. I bring in foreign investors to France, to Nigeria. I've done with few states like Taraba State, done projects with the Lagos State government. But beyond all of that, please, the previous slide, please. The previous slide. Beyond getting international investors, there's something that the government has overlooked, and that's HNIs in the diaspora. There are Nigerians abroad who, I can tell you this for free, who are not MEP guys. There are Nigerians abroad who own universities in Europe. So when I say they own universities, they are not managers. They own the universities, and you might not even see a black person there. Nigerians. So the same spirit through which a Nigerian works here, passionate. I mean, the only difference is that now that somewhere where there's no epileptic power supply, where they have good policies, and they still devote themselves and they create sustainable companies. And some of these values have been undertapped. We are still scratching the surface. President Macron set up a club in 2018. And I was part of the conversation, France-Nigerian Investment Club, 2019. In that club, there were about 30 top guys from France and Nigeria. From Nigeria, you can guess, your guess as good as mine. Alhaji Aliko Dangote, Mr. Tony Elumelu, Chief Otedola, all of the big guys. So it was 15 from Nigeria, about 16 from Nigeria, and then 14 from France. The ones from France are the heads of the likes of JC Decaux, Total, Société Générale. So this club is supposed to begin to talk about bilateral engagement in terms of business. After the launch of the club in Nigeria here, in 2019, we went back to Paris with the French president and everyone, and then I asked them that before we have the second leg of the discussion and talking about what France would do for Nigeria or what they have been doing. I mean, I know there's Bolloré, I know we have Lafarge, I know we have all of these big groups, JC Decaux in advertising. I said, can you give me, so I told the team, can you give me a session based on what our organization does? I want to just show you something that we do in France. Because when also the Europeans hear about Nigerians, what is mainstream is prostitution, human trafficking, the prince from Nigeria, the prince. So that's what's mainstream. So I asked them for a session. And in that session, I chose few members of our network, just few, just to whet their appetites. And I told these guys, please just come tell them what you do as Nigerians based in France. One of them makes something less than 10 million euros annually into automobile. Another one just raised the funding from Goldman Sachs, 5 million renewable energy. And I told them in this panel, all I've just come to show you too is, as much as you create jobs in Nigeria, we're thankful. But even though we don't make noise, there are Nigerians who are providing jobs in France, and they're not illegal. They are paying tax, they are giving salaries to people, and they are at the top of their game. And I told them this is just few members of our network. And then even the French stakeholders were surprised that you guys are this strong here. I said, then you can come for more engagement in an event so I can tell you more. And this is just let us know that the idea was to get them to understand that even though we're not as loud and some of these people are silent, we've done a due diligence over the years, and these are members of our network who would do collaborations together. And that's why I'm saying that if they can do as much as that abroad, across the entire Europe, I don't want to talk to you about things going on in Netherlands, in Switzerland. I'm saying we can do more and tap into that reservoir for investment here. So when we talk about startups, and a startup comes to me because I also consult for startups. I help Nigerian startups to expand to Europe. So I tell them, what do you want to raise? A startup tells me, I want to raise 100,000 euros. I said, I can help you get an international investor, and that's fine. But do you mind if I get you Nigerians who can give you the same money? So what I do most times is I just go to our network. So there's a good business on ground. This guy is credible. We've done a due diligence. It needs 100,000. 5 Nigerians will just drop 20,000. I said, does it matter to you where it's coming from? So I'm saying, it doesn't matter whether you need the investment, right? But I'm saying there's a diaspora fund that you can tap into. And the difference for the startup is that these ones have passion for Nigeria, right? They want to give back. So while they're abroad, they're happy to invest in SMEs because even though they're abroad, they're creating jobs through the vehicle of other SMEs, and they're also investing. And one thing people like President Macron has done very well is that even when he became president, one of the first things President Macron did was that he set up a committee. In French, it's called Conseil Présidentiel pour l'Afrique. So what that means in English is the Presidential Council for Africa. This group of guys from Mali, from different strategic countries in Africa, help him to be able to mainstream into the polity of the countries. They advise him even as far as what speech he should say. When you go to this country, they help create the narrative. So it doesn't even come out as being proud. And this is what he has done, using diasporas to be able to get into the... And if the French president and other presidents can be that smart and intelligent, I'm wondering, what are we doing? So while we are crying, loud that they've gone, the guy there is asking himself, but I can still be relevant. Exactly as I was talking about technology today. I mean, we're in a world where you don't even have to be in Switzerland to create value there. Flutterwave is dominating the world. Nigerians abroad can be abroad and can still create value here. Next slide, please. So before I talk about this, I was talking about social capital. One of the things the government has to understand is that diaspora has what is called, if you can go back to the previous slide, sorry, social capital. And very important because beyond knowledge capital, social capital has to do with connections. Because living in a place like Germany for 20 years counts for something. Who is best fit to help the government mainstream into development discussions, if not a Nigerian that doesn't understand about Frankfurt and how the EU operates? So that's what we call social capital. Their influence, their affluence. A Nigerian company that I was working for reached out to me and was trying to get a partnership in Europe. And they're very strong here. If I mention their name, some of you probably know them. Strong, sent emails, no response. Traveled down to Europe, went for meetings, they threw their papers back to them. So I told them, are you tired? They said yes. So I said, so give me 2 days, and then we'll go together with your team, and you get this deal signed. So just for free, I made calls, and then we went to an office, and I told them, we're going to work with you. And what they asked me was, I've been on this search for 6 months, and they've been throwing my document and partnership around. In my mind, I was telling him, just they play who? Because you think 6 months Google qualifies for partnership deals compared to somebody who has lived there, knows how they work. Even as short as how you write your email, so an European stakeholder can determine whether they're working with you or not. And those nuances around business deals, you don't know by staying in Lagos. And I'm saying that it can be leveraged because they have what is called social capital. And companies have to understand that, and so is the government, to know that they don't need to break brick and mortar to be able to get this done. The other capital I want to talk about is knowledge capital, brain circulation. I was part of a conversation with the IOM. I also worked with the IOM on Diaspora Engagement. And the IOM is saying, it's funny that those who try to solve our problems are, those who don't even have the issues that we have. And one of those things we're talking about is how do we reverse the brain drain and begin to do brain gain? And one of the things I mentioned to the IOM is to say, there are ways we can tap into this. Nigerians don't have, when I'm even in France, sometimes I visit a doctor. I don't even get to the doctor, it's teleconsulting. So when the president of the Nigerian Medical Association is shouting 40,000 doctors are available to serve 200 million Nigerians, naturally they don't have to be here. Even the ones who have jackpot can still serve. Because even abroad, there are doctors I don't see. They do teleconsultation. So why can't we leverage on technology and still be able to mainstream our guys in the UK? Let's go to the next slide. I want to talk about our ODs abroad. And I'm saying this because I've also engaged, they're part of our network too. These are people who are retirees. They've been abroad for 40 years. Some of them left during Biafran War, 50 years, 60 years. They've seen it all. They've done it all. And what they're asking is, they are now at the level of Maslow's hierarchy need. self-fulfillment. I want to give back. But they don't have the energy for bureaucracy. So, and these guys, an example I would name it, I mean, this is real, but I'll do a prose name. I met Mr. John Bosco in Europe, and he told me, I'm going to give you 1 million euros. Because I'm doing well in Europe, I've done a lot. And all I want you to do, he gave me a task on my team. Take this 1 million euros back to Nigeria and give it to young people that don't have collateral, but be sure that when we give them this money, they return the money as it is. And that was the assignment he gave us about 2-3 years ago. The reason why my colleagues and I didn't collect the money is because we don't even know where to catch them from, because somebody can collect the money and be abroad, because I've seen people collect foundation funds, entrepreneurship, and they're now doing masters abroad. So I left the funds. There are many of Mr. John Bosco who are saying, I just want to build a university, and I don't want problems with NUC. I just want people who are intelligent. How do we get these HNIs? And the government needs to start looking at, and some of them are professors in leading universities, and all they want to do is just give back. But we need to think about them. Next slide, I think I have 2 more slides. Diaspora voting, very important. I was part of the conversation, and unfortunately, some of us followed the conversation. It was dropped at the second hearing. It's a shame. Over about 2/3 of African countries are already doing diaspora voting. Mali, Guinea, name them, Gambia. The giants of Africa can't do diaspora voting. In the world, about 118 countries are already doing diaspora voting. What is the fear? So, you won't know the fear. All right. This is very important. The new incoming administration must re-engineer the missions. Nigerian embassies are not just created for the purpose of visa renewal. As a matter of fact, just so you know, some Nigerians travel back to Nigeria, abroad to Nigeria, to renew, because it's harder to even renew your passport abroad. And so imagine what some of them see the embassy has. If they don't need certificates or birth certificates to be stamped, they have no business there. But embassies can do more. Their job is not just stamping passports and renewing passports. Bringing it home here, some of you have engaged with the likes of the British High Commission, Netherlands, French, the Dutch. They have initiatives where they promote investment in their countries. Every desk, there's a desk that is strictly looking out for their country's interest. And it's very important that we begin to help our missions and engineer them. And they should be taxed, not just collect salaries, but to be taxed to bring in real value for Nigeria and be able to collaborate with Nigerian associations. Last but not the least, next slide. We can begin to look at cases that have worked. NIDCOM is doing a very interesting work with, some of us might probably know about Nigerian Diaspora Investment Summit by NIDCOM. I applaud that, where diaspora members will come back home and try to see possible fund opportunities and investment opportunities that they can work with. The gathering in Ireland in 2013 brought 3,000 Irish people from abroad. It changed Ireland forever in 2013, the Irish gathering. Ghana did the same thing. As a matter of fact, based on Ghana's homecoming in 2019, the Ghanaian economy increased by 6% in the first quarter, just after that thing. And today you see Idris Elba, everybody going to Ghana because the diaspora has been involved. That's what we do also. Every year, my colleagues and I, we do what is called Spotlight Nigeria. We've done for 5 editions. This year, we carry Nigerian companies, and the goal is simple. It's not enough to tell people to come to our country. We look for credible organizations, credible companies, and we take them and say, you become institutionalized abroad, where you can now begin to charge for Forex. And what better time to charge for Forex than an inflation period? I close with this story. Last slide. The reason why all of these are important, what I've said all of this, is just for one reason. When I got into Europe, I met one of our oldies. And after he's been there he's at the top of his career. When you mention top 3, he's part of them in that country, in that sector. And so he advised me, and he said, you have to know what you're doing in Europe. I was very fresh with my colleagues. I was trying to do things. And one of the things he mentioned to me was, I was asking him, what really was your problem in Europe? Why are you saying in negative narration? And this is what he told me. He said, after having secured nationality about 30 years ago, give birth here, a student, now European citizen, Nigerian, dual citizenship, he was driving one of the days and going to work, and he was stopped by the local policeman in the country. an European country. I don't want to mention the country because I work with missions. So, and the policeman asked him, where are you going to? Yeah, I'm going to work. Said, can I have your identity card? He proudly showed his European citizenship. And the policeman asked him, where are you from? He said, yeah, I'm French. I live here. You can see from my card. And then he asked him again, I know, but where are you really from? Where are you really, really from? So, in all of these conversations, no matter how much we travel, no matter how much people live there, home is still home. People know themselves. I'm now talking in parables. They know themselves. You collect all of that. There's a deep ancestral voice in the heart of every diaspora that when they get to Murtala Airport with that nonsense fan that is flying and the crazy heat that is blowing, there's something about, this is where I can do my nonsense. I am home. Not because they've not been home. Some of them have lived 30 years. But now this is me. And I'm saying this for those who are about to jackpot. While you are planning your jackpot, just know that you should jackpot, but don't approach yourself. So that after you have done all, they still don't ask you, where are you really, really from? So in as much as you're planning, please don't approach yourself. I do at least 3 trips to Nigeria. I do bilateral engagements. I've been awarded on many platforms. But all of this is not even because of, it's a teamwork. The first thing I do was to galvanize people. And that's also because my success story in Europe is not complete without Nigerian story. I'm useless in Europe. All I sell is Nigeria. So my identity really, the day I can't sell Nigeria anymore, I know Nigeria is hard to sell. To say, come invest, support this project, bring investors here to different states, it's hard to sell. But I'm saying my relevance. But Nigeria is also very easy to sell. Even though it's a paradox. Because with all of the problems and challenges, we are better than many countries in many respects. Creative industry, is like I mentioned, technology hub, #1 in Africa. So what we do back in Europe is the same what they do in Europe. We spotlight the good part. Because even in European countries, I know many places are not safe. People get stabbed. It doesn't come on the news. So every time they call on me and tell me, come, let's talk about Boko Haram, I said, I'm not doing any news. I want to talk about innovation in my country. Because when it happens here, in 3 days, we don't sit on the air. So that's not all that happens in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, there are some places that are safer in Lagos, in Adamawa, than some European countries. And that's what we have to spotlight. There's good things. But all of this can happen if we have a government who sees the future and doesn't see migration as a problem. And I'll end by one thing. My colleague will say, there is nothing wrong with Nigeria that cannot be fixed by what is right with Nigeria. And diaspora is one of those things. Thank you.